Hey up and welcome to the Temple of Bleh. This is a conversation with Logan Tabor, the vocalist of All the Pretty Things. Now, there's this podcast with Doc Coyle of God Forbid and Bad Wolves, where he articulates that backstage at a metal concert isn't what you think it is. It's a lot of like dudes in their 40s doing yoga. This is kind of an articulation on that observation, and you'll figure it out as you listen through. But yeah, there's a lot of me pontificating and taking ages to stick the landing on some questions, but you should be used to that by now. All the Pretty Things are on all your favourite streaming platforms. They're currently drip feeding us singles in the run up to the album release, which I believe is as of yet untitled, but if I'm wrong about that, I'll also put that in the description. I'm sure someone will tell me if I'm wrong. The quickest way to get All the Pretty Things in your ears is to just get on Spotify or whatnot and type in Teenage Lines. That'll take you to one of their singles and is personally my favourite track from them. So, let's get into it. 1, 2, fuck shit up. Let's just kick off. Well, thank you very much for joining me, Logan, and taking time. All the Pretty Things. I want to start. I've done a bit of prep. I've been listening to the music and listening to a few interviews and things like that. And I wanted to talk briefly about the music, but all the interviews that we've done so far, I say you guys have done so far, there's almost an implication that All the Pretty Things is like in an embryonic state, ready to be unleashed onto the world. And I disagree with that. I think it's a thing that's in flight and it's currently in progress. So all my questions are going to be kind of like a bit further down in the process. And you'll just have to bear with me because, yeah, man, Jamie knows, like, I just pontificate and I get... I try and I'd circle the drain before arriving at an actual question. So you just have to bear with me, I'm afraid.
Oh, good. Yeah, let's get in. Let's do it.
The sound itself, man, it's a breath of fresh air because I can't find. This is the good news, right? I can't think of anything that it exactly sounds like. I couldn't draw like a particular one singular influence or one singular path that it was trying to go down. But I also thought, this is 2004 to 2007, what radio rock should have been, but it went down the emo route. That was the sexy thing. They didn't know that there was like a good hard rock viability, which is what I think All the Pretty Things delivers. Does that ring a bell with you? Does that sort of add up for you, that assessment? I know it's a very singular way of looking at it, but was that the intention to sort of bring that kind of, how do I say it? There's a youthfulness to it. There's an articulation to it, an accessibility to it, all at the same time, which just reminds me of that era, that 2005 kind of thing. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, that's kind of how it started off. We had just a few ideas floating around that were pretty well fleshed out, but we all kind of came from that early 2000s hard rock bleeding into, like emo leaning hard rock era. And I think we had all kind of gotten away from it to some extent, with other projects since that time. And when I heard these songs at first, I was like, oh man, that takes me right back to like my wheelhouse, the stuff I was writing in 2004 to like 2009, somewhere in there, and I was just pumped to work on it, but to also, have like sort of a new frame of mind about the approach. I was like, we're older now, we're more mature, we can sort of inject this music with more thought-provoking lyrics and, really focus in on song structure, what needs to be there, what doesn't, making everything work for the song. Always have the song and the listener in mind more so than like our own personal artistic whatever. But yeah, we kind of wanted to have sort of this like revival of the emo thing, but be able to use it in like a popular music format, like song formatting for pop radio. But with the hard rock, how their songs are just like, take Shinedown, for example, or somebody like that kind of falls into the hard rock category. Mm-hmm. These big triumphant choruses and that sort of thing, and just good production. But the song format is very pop friendly, verse, chorus, bridge, chorus, or whatever. Not to say that we were trying to be boring or predictable, but, we wanted it to be accessible, but still thought provoking. You know.
I think the thing that sort of we say emo leading hard rock, the thing that adds the weight to the emo bit is your range. Shinedown's a good example because it's got that. Shinedown has that hard rock element, but when you've got your vocals that are going across the top and could get the fry, a great fry, a great emotive fry on it, it really harkens back to those days. And in the way that music is cyclical, we now live in a post when we were young fest. So it's in vogue in the sense that people aren't ignoring that emo led stuff. And that's why I think that's why it felt fresh to me, right? Because whenever you had a sound like that back in those days, it was marred with the image, or it was marred with the breakdown, or marred with the MySpace era of highfalutin delivery and image. It was, but so this feels a lot more raw, and I think a lot of that has to do with your age. So can you tell me about forming a band in your 30s? And I'd like to articulate on this point quite a bit because I think it's like a great thing, especially my experience talking about Roadrunner Records for the last 2 years. I speak to a lot of 65-year-olds who quit the band in their 20s, then came back and are now making a living off their first 2 albums, right? So I'm like, right, well, we keep getting told this isn't an old man's game and it's a young man's game, but we're forming bands in our 30s which rock. So what's the deal?
Yeah, man, I think about that so much. That's a great question. I think it's, kind of like I said, it's like you take a break for a while, or you go off and do a different type of music or whatever it may be, and you come back and you're just more mature. You have like a better outlook on it. And yeah, I mean, one would start to think because we see all these pop stars that are coming out and they're like 19 to 23. You think that like starting a new band in your 30s is like, oh, those are just a bunch of dinosaurs roaming the stage, but it's and maybe we are, but at the same time I think we still look pretty good, or at least I convince myself that every morning at the top of the day, so I don't jump off a cliff or something. But I think we still look decent. We're still like active. We stay up to date on what's actually happening in the hard rock scene. And like you said, man, it was pretty inspiring for us. 2 things really, to see sort of this reawakening of that early 2000s era, because man, you've got all these bands going back on tour and they're not younger than they used to be, but they still get up there and they rock, and their fans don't care how old they are. They just love the music. And man, we went to When We Were Young Fest in Vegas last year, and the coolest thing was not only seeing all the 30-somethings our age that were reliving their youth, so to speak, but we also saw a ton of kids, like kids who clearly had just recently been exposed to this older scene, like to the MCR and Story of the Year and all that stuff, and they had identified with it and adopted it. There were kids there that were 16 years old wearing Rancid shirts and just like going for it, dude. It was rad. So it was inspiring to see that not only is my age group getting back into it, but there's an entire group of people, younger people, discovering it. Kind of like how we discovered Led Zeppelin. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We were in high school and we were like, oh, this is sick. This is going to be my identity now. Yeah. It's the same deal. I love it.
I like that the conversation about music and how people get into music and what people can do with music as the industry and the technology has evolved. The conversation matured so much that people are kind of realizing that Jimmy Page didn't just have loads of money. There was a big thing. There was loads of things happening with Led Zeppelin that got them to the stage they were. That when you have those idols and you have those points of reference, their business model was the mystique around the artist, and the business model was about this big grandiose image, which now the veil has been completely pierced on that. And it's happened. It was down to that generation of music. It was the MySpace generation where it was like the business model became, we need to engage on a regular basis and really show people what's behind the curtain and things like that.
Right.
Starting a band in your 30s, especially in the last 10 years where there hasn't been like a big guitar band that's really broken the mold, has the industry kind of, or has your expectations of the industry sort of changed? Or have you learned anything new in the past couple of years? Or maybe just with All the Pretty Things business model? Is there a plan going forward to interface in this whole new world in a way that you might not have thought about previously? I don't know if I'm pontificating too much. Let me know if I can like rephrase that.
No, I think I got you. Yeah. So back in the day, I feel like we still hadn't quite, or I say we, like actually personally, not us as a society, but like any of the bands that I was in, we were trying with the social media thing, like trying to figure that out, and it was cool because you could connect with bands and people all over the world. But it's even changed so much from then, like so much from then. It's kind of like how we invented the airplane in like 1912, and by 1960 we were in space.
Yeah.
It's kind of like that. The past 20 years of social media have just changed again and again and again, and we are finding ourselves constantly strategizing on like, okay, what's our persona going to be as a unit? What are our personas going to be as individuals? How to utilize all these platforms? And yeah, it's a little challenging at times for us, and we have to like go get insight from, dare I say, younger folks as to how to use certain platforms and that sort of thing. But I don't know if am I getting around to your question, all right?
Absolutely. And I'm gonna dovetail it with one of my own observations of people in the similar position as yourself.
Okay.
So I think the point that we're arriving at the same landing strip. There is no business model these days. No one can agree what the business model is because it's
right.
changed completely. Right. There's an understanding that touring is where the money is, as is merch. And there's obviously a big conversation about venue cuts and post-COVID. And over here in the UK, touring is like almost non-viable for US bands just because of the weird political stuff that's been going on. But this, at the same time, it's a landscape which is like rife and it's fertile for innovation. And an example I give this in this regard is a guy called Matt Hafey from a band called Trivium, who you may well be familiar with. So that guy, I don't think Trivium have an album cycle anymore. I think Matt has a Twitch stream cycle, which is always on. And the album is informing that, which sounds daft until you realize until you're sort of thinking about where the money's transacting. Because there's no money in record sales. So it's not that. The money's in the touring, which also informs his streams because he streams the live shows. And then he's performing his songs on his streams when he's back home. You know what I mean? So it's like the flow of the business for his band, it kind of transacts outside of the conventional retail or the conventional streaming platforms. It's a different world completely. So that's why I'm interested when you're saying we're trying to strategize over the different personas and we're trying to strategize on the different platforms. Because I don't have the patience for it personally. If I was in a band now, I'd be like, I cannot be fucked with this. This is a full-time job for someone who has to know how to game the algorithm. Because that's the deal, isn't it? You have to try and go viral. You got to try and catch the wave, and there's no way to do that by design.
Yeah, man, it's almost like getting in a routine, coming up with a plan, sticking to a routine, researching as much as you possibly can on posting times, posting frequency, hashtagging, dude, I mean the whole thing, and we're all doing research. Worth and I have even talked about so he and I occasionally will work on, say, a short film or something where I'll do the editing and I'll toss over the audio mastering to him. And we've been tossing around the idea of maybe this post-production studio, but like looping in essentially like an in-house live streaming studio, where it's just equipped with your camera and your audio switcher, someone to run it, lights, fog, all this stuff, a bunch of different camera angles, and just essentially working towards that being what we would do as like supplemental touring, depending on what the climate's like touring wise, and just when we're not touring, having a place to do these live streams and take tips, or the whole, is it the Patreon deal?
What you're suggesting is a digital club where you're the house band.
Exactly. I
That's a
your
question.
way of putting it was much more eloquent. I appreciate you coming in with the save there, dude. I was
No,
like,
it's cool though because like this is what I mean, man. It's like it's totally fertile the environment to do stuff like that. Not knowing if it's going to be successful or not, but trying to find a way where it's like, what's fun? What's
right,
fun, and therefore we can maximize our opportunities on there because we're going to be doing it often, right?
right.
That's the only way you can game the system these days. Because I say gaming the system, there is no system. It's a completely different kettle of fish.
You have to make it. We're like making the rules up as we go, essentially. And if you find a formula that works, you just gotta like hone in on it and beat it to death. See what you can do with it.
In the same capacity, then, so why singles? Because this is another thing that's changed. We're drip feeding singles out there
Mm-hmm.
as opposed to like going for the album cycle or building up a PR front on that. Was there a strategy behind that? Or was there a thinking behind that I'm not totally clued into?
We actually just we had this batch of 3 songs, right, that we had finished probably last year sometime, and we had talked about just continuing on this cycle of singles because it seemed like a lot of people were doing that. Not everybody, but in the meantime, so we got 2 singles out now, and in the meantime, we just said fuck it, and we recorded a whole album. And so I'm thinking, and now I don't know the full strategy yet, so it's just take it with a grain of salt. But it seems like we're probably going to do one more single, and then hopefully put out the rest of the album as like a way of sort of championing the old ways. You know, drop a couple good ones, and then they're included on the album. But then the album comes out, and you have this big piece of work that people can get excited about, and it's got artwork with it, and just the whole deal. And man, that's why it's so tough. It's like we're trying to integrate with this modern way of doing things while at the same time sort of paying homage to the way things were when we were growing up,
Yeah.
because people identify with that.
I also
And
think there's also something to be said about the process itself. Iteratively doing things with singles works, I think, to getting people engaged, especially, I guess, at this stage, because, as I say, it's a band that's in flight and doing things. When we do things like this, like media, it's one footprint, another footprint, another footprint, and the presence increases. So when the album drops, there's a foundation. I do get that.
yeah,
Justin Hawkins from The Darkness, he had an interesting take on albums versus singles, which is the album has to be done in 2 or 3 weeks. It has to be done. It doesn't matter if there's bad takes because you just comp them or whatever. And if it's not perfect, that's fine. Because the whole idea is it has to capture a particular moment in time. And
right.
I think with someone like him, I totally get it. Because he's quite a big flamboyant person. I say flamboyant. He's a big personality, and his stage persona is quite flamboyant and very sort of like 70s glam rock, British glam rock. So you kind of get like, when I listen to Pinewood Smile, which is like one of my favorite Darkness album, you can tell that week he was super into Sweet, or he was super into, and but it's about that window. I'm just wondering if that's the kind of thing that you could get on board with in terms of an album making process, or in relation to the All the Pretty Things album. Was this a train of thought that was captured in a particular moment in time, or was it iteratively built over a year or so?
Man, it's interesting because it's kind of both. So we had all these demos that eventually turned into the album, and they were probably with us for about a year. But over the course of like from today and going back about 2 or 3 months, in that time period, we basically rewrote most of it. We had Tristan come down here and do all his guitars, Jeremy come down here and do all of his drums. And in that time period, I wrote and recorded all the vocals as well. So we did kind of condense it down. Like you're saying, it wasn't as short of a time period as 2 or 3 weeks. It was more like 2 or 3 months. But at the same time, I've moved in with Worth, and Worth's house is where the studio is. So we just lived and breathed this thing, man. It was like, it would keep me up at night. I'm still awake at night from this thing. It just completely disrupted my sleep schedule, my patterns of thinking. And it's interesting, man. You think there are going to be times you're like, are we going to make it? Am I going to have enough viable lyrical ideas or melodic ideas in that a period of time? But once you start down that path of trying to capture this moment in time, this feeling, or this series of feelings, or this state of mind that you're in while doing it, it just kind of starts coming out, man. And you can't
Yeah.
stop it. You can't do anything to stop it. And I think that is the cool thing. Now we didn't do it in 2 or 3 weeks again, but I do think it captured like who we were right in this 2 or 3 month period.
I think it's the mechanics of how you can access flow. That's the thing, isn't it? And I think this is another advantage to having a band in your 30s. I think in another interview you mentioned you have notebooks and you write in the notebooks. And I think with the other interviewer, he was trying to compare like that versus having notes on your phone or onto like a PC. And I was thinking the reason it works for me is writing with a pen is instant flow. Whereas if you have to get to a PC, there's block tasks. You have to turn the PC on. You got to open the software. You've got to scroll past your other notes, and then you got to start tapping. And that, to me, isn't flow. It's a staggered, weird process. But again, I think that's an advantage of your decision you've made as a mature person in this industry. Move in with Worth, get into the mindset.
Yeah.
Because that's where you're going to get the tap.
Yeah, man, because there would be nights where, we will have, say, like 5 p.m, we started recording. We probably did vocal takes until like from 5 to 8 or 5 to 9. Then we would kind of sit around, maybe eat food and listen to some music and get inspired. And there would be times at like midnight, I'd be like, okay, now I need to scream my guts out for the next hour and get this one really nasty part because I was just feeling it. But had I gone back to my house all the way across town, wouldn't have been able to capture certain moments, man. So it was pretty important. I don't think it would have happened in nearly that time frame if I hadn't just dropped everything and moved into Worth's house. So
how do you keep on top of your voice then? Have you got like a routine? Have you got an exercise routine?
No, man, I don't. I wish I had a more interesting answer for you. I've noticed for sure the biggest thing that messes me up is lack of sleep.
Really?
Like which has been an issue because with all this stuff going on in my head, there's been a lot of times where I haven't slept, but, drinking's not great for it. Smoking's not great for it. I do those things occasionally, but as long as I get a pretty good bit of sleep, I should be all right. And there is sort of so for that register that you're talking about, the sort of Fry-ish register, like the chorus of Teenage Lines, there is there's a funny little break-in period with that particular part of my voice. And what it really is like, I need to sing normal for a while. And then I need to sounds terrible. Like, singers everywhere are just going to cringe. I almost need to like hurt myself for about 20 minutes trying to access that register and then take a 10-minute break. And when I come back, it's like, found it. Wow. Let's roll. It's the weirdest thing, man. But I mean, I've been singing for 20 years and it literally took me most of this time to kind of find that routine and find certain registers that are on the album. It's very strange.
And if it's something you carry on doing, it's going to be one of those things you're going to find more over the next 20 years. You'll find it like you got to hang upside down like a bat and recite something, and then it's there. Great,
Yeah, I got to put on a gas mask and sit on a park bench while recording in order.
Yeah, man. So what's the plan going forward then? Is now the time where you're looking at getting on the road? I know it feels like when we talk about the pandemic and like the moves of the industry since then, in earnest, I think people have only been touring properly for about a year, 18 months.
I know, man.
So what's the next step then? Is it getting on the road? Is it trying to hone in the live sound?
Yeah, I think so. We need to get the mix back of this album. I think we're gonna try to shop it around a bit. Maybe that's all, here and there, whatever. And we need to get it back and then start strategizing. And I do think that the plan is to maybe start going for festivals and that sort of thing. Just kind of starting to like integrate into the community, make some good friends, which we already do have some pretty good friends that are on these festivals and that are in this sort of hard rock scene. But you know, we want to just kind of like integrate with everybody, make some friends, see if we can hop on a tour. And if nothing else, just try to do it ourselves, man. I think we're at a point where if we play our cards right promotion wise with this album, I mean we got a really really good album that I think doesn't sound like anything else. You know, it like you said earlier, it leans towards this sometimes and it leans towards that.
It's
sometimes.
a breath of fresh air, is what it is.
Well, I appreciate that, man. That means a lot, and dude, we put a lot of work into making sure the rest of the record followed suit with that. And you know, that can either work one of two ways. People can either be afraid of it because they haven't quite heard anything like it, but we're all pretty confident, man. It's like it's got a thing that I think people will latch onto, and we're just gonna, you know, like I said, try to do the festival thing, try to do small tours here and there, and just make sure we don't give up, dude. It's gonna be a lot of work, but we're ready for it.
This is the 30s bug, man, because you've been in this game for long enough, you can manage your expectations and you can be kind of cool with it regardless. And like,
yeah, exactly.
The festival runs and maybe getting onto a tour, that's all the activities of like proving to yourselves and everyone else that okay, it is a real thing, and there is like there's a momentum and there's a metabolism that you can sort of tap into, you know.
Yeah.
So you were saying you do some video editing. I guess it is the plan you can take that on the road, couldn't you? It depends on what you use.
Yeah, it depends on more so like the I guess the weight of the project. Yeah. I mean, it'd be kind of maybe tough to. I mean, it depends on the rig. I might be able to swing it with like a Mac Mini and a little monitor or something.
What do you
but
use?
Yeah, a lot of the 8K file sizes kind of get out of control sometimes if you don't have the right rig. But
yeah, I use DaVinci Resolve, which I know they keep launching new products, and there's this really amazing like cloud functionality now, so you could be editing from anywhere in the world because all the infrastructure is sat somewhere else. But yeah, I mean, no, it's these days it's a lot easier to do these things while operating a band. I think it's never been an option before, and we're going to see more of it. And I think it's again killing the idea. It's again back to that what we're saying about the culture's in a weird place. The business is in a weird place. No one's ever thought if you're going to be in a rock band, dude, you're going to have to sacrifice this, sacrifice that. It's like, yeah, those things, but I can fucking work on the road. It's not like a big deal. We can definitely like lower the stakes. We can do everything and lower the stakes.
Yeah.
It's just got to want to live the life you want to live.
Right. Yeah, dude, that's honestly the cool thing. That's going to be the saving grace there, is the fact that, you know, I think most of us will be able to sort of keep working to some extent where we don't have to put everything on the line.
Yeah.
You know, not that we wouldn't. I mean, we definitely want it bad enough to put everything on the line hypothetically, but it's this day and age, you don't have to. It's not as much of a risk or liability. And yeah, like you said, just managing expectations. It's like, yeah, we're going on the road because we're working, not because we're going to go party and destroy our brains and like, you know, not take care of ourselves. Like, we're going to be going to bed every night, hopefully by midnight, and then waking up and working for a few hours and getting to the next gig, man. It's just constant work. But
it's also when we do lower the stakes like that and we're not trying to put everything on the line, we're just having fun. It opens up an entire avenue of we can take risks because we're just having fun and we can do what feels right. And the incentive structure is a bit more pure and a bit more grounded. And again, this is why I'm excited by people in their 30s starting bands. It's a completely different direction. Yeah.
And we've all had our ups and downs in the music career. You know, we've all had hopeful moments where our dreams got crushed, just the rug pulled out from under us. We've also had moments of victories and that sort of thing. So I think we're all just jaded enough to like keep our head out of the clouds and like to remain realistic and to be respectful and like to ourselves and to each other, and to just like not take it too hard when things don't immediately happen overnight, you know?
Yeah. No, I'm with you, man. I'm with you. Moving into a bit of a more laid back place. What bands are you excited about these days? I know you cite Chris Cornell quite often in terms of,
Love Chris.
yeah, in terms of influences. I'm thinking, what's got you excited? Like that's on the scene right now.
Um, man, I gotta say the fact that Coheed is back in business is really really exciting for me. I love those dudes. And I mean it's not like they ever really stopped, but they just put out that album. I think it was last year that is an absolute slammer. And they're on a touring cycle right now. They're gonna come through our hometown with Incubus, and I'm just like, wow, this is the greatest musical revival, like reawakening of all time. This is like Incubus and Coheed on the same bill, just coming through my hometown. Where are we? But man, I've been really getting pumped about I mean I love all the like the insanely technical metal, like the Polyphias and the Plinis of the world right now. They're just killing it, doing lots of good stuff for me. But to be honest with you, the female led R&B scene has really really been doing it for me, like the Sabrina Claudios of the world.
Okay, I'm gonna put some names down. Sabrina Claudios.
Gotta do Sabrina Claudio. Look up an album called Truth Is. That's just Worth makes fun of me all the time for listening to this, but dude, it is like the sexiest. It's like Billie Eilish, but straight up like sexy R&B.
Right, you know? Right. Yeah, interesting.
Yeah.
On the Coheed front. Oh, sorry. Continue. I'll come back.
Oh no, you're good. I'd much rather talk about the Coheed front.
I haven't heard the new album, but that Jesse's Girl 2 was like, you know, when they do the Spotify Wraps at the end of the year, like it must have been like third or fourth or something like that. It was like I've constantly had that on repeat. It's just like a summertime jam. That
yeah, dude. Well, they know what they're doing, man. They always have great production. They're very thoughtful about their songwriting, but they just don't like compromise. Like that dude says some of the weirdest stuff anyone has ever said on a pop song, but it works. I don't know what it is. He just this demon with a big set of hair, and he just it's incredible.
I love this point of an artist's career though, where it's like you can track it. You can go. I think for them it was like Apollo 4 was probably the biggest one, and then the audience sort of contracts into this set of diehards, and then the band enter the space which you're in now, which is we know what we're doing. We've been at this for a while now. We can kind of just have fun with it. And that's what I think produces like some of the more interesting stuff. And that's why, I mean, you can get nostalgic about Welcome Home and you can be nostalgic about being at the festivals in the UK when that stuff happened. But that will only keep your fire lit while you're remembering it.
Right.
You got to get on board with the new. This is why like Metallica put a new album out. I've not actually listened to it yet, but that's why I think it's important that they keep pushing things forward and keep trying to invent new things, because I want to be able to say when Claudio from Coheed is in his 60s, he can generate that kind of fire and do things that are interesting. You know,
I think he's the type of dude that's got what it takes to keep being that rad when he's like just falling apart. You know, not that the Metallica guys are falling apart. I haven't heard the new Metallica record either, but I'll bet it's the thing is.
I've lost your audio, mate.
Oh, hello.
There we go.
You got me? Yep. Yeah, I was saying I hadn't heard the new Metallica either, but I bet it's awesome. They just have a way of doing it. Like I'll say, we won't talk about Saint Anger. I'll just mention that we won't talk about Saint Anger. But then they came back with Death Magnetic, dude, and that album absolutely destroys. And I mean, and they just keep it happening. Man, I hope I can sustain it the way some of these dudes have. It inspires hope, you know. It's cool.
In the spirit of like new bands and things, I'm trying to push this band I've heard from Norway called Moron Police. Horrible name, but they're like, I find it really interesting. Like they put out an album 4 years ago now, Jesus, called A Boat on the Sea, and the way I've kind of described it is methed up Elton John with Faith No More as a backing band. It's just like really eclectic, but the vocal hooks are really big. But it's kind of a prog band. But everyone seems to refer to them as a prog band. But I'm like, no, these hooks are way too sexy. This is more pop rock than it is prog. But
Right.
I'll fire some over to you, and you can make your own judgment. But everyone that I
Yeah,
sent
I
it to
need
is
it. I
like, I
need to
don't
hear.
know. Yeah, everyone I sent it to is like, I don't know. I'm not feeling this. I'm like, how? I can't be the only person who's
Yeah, yeah.
completely
Please,
on board.
please send me that because now I'm insanely curious. Your description of it was intriguing, very intriguing.
Yeah, man. All right, I'm done in terms of questions. Is there anything else that you want to plug in terms of upcoming milestones or anything that's happening on the band front that you want to highlight, or
No, I
is it
mean,
just a wait and see way of doing things at the minute?
yeah, I mean, at this point, I think we need to. We sent the album off to get mixed, so definitely, if you're interested, be on the lookout for album updates. But in the meantime, I think we're gonna kind of like shift gears, and we really need to move over to our social media platforms and start pushing this TikTok thing that I am so very new to. So look for us on there, and then obviously the normal ones, the Instagrams, the Facebooks. But I think we're gonna have to kind of pivot and start really pushing those social media outlets and bringing the audience in, so that when the time comes to put the album out, we got some people to show it to.
I'm interested in the digital bar idea as well. I know I'm calling it that, and you're not calling it that, but I think
No, you actually fully changed my perspective on what that could be, and now I'm having all sorts of ideas. I'm like really pumped that you put it into perspective like that. That rules. That changes the whole thing, which in a good way.
Cool. I'm glad to hear it because like I say, man, it's fertile ground. Just do what feels right and just keep doing it, man. Because that's the fun.
Yeah.
There'd be no point unless it was fun, right? Unless it was no point if it was not fun.
Right. Yeah, I agree. And yeah, you just saying the words digital bar is like, I'm like, yes, that's the thing. We gotta have like background actors and stuff. No, I'm pumped. I'm gonna send you updates.